This is one of my favorite stories. I don't know how many years ago it was. It's quite a while ago. I just moved to Southern California. I was opening up my NLP business, had not a dime to my name, so I met with this printing company in hopes of doing a trade out for NLP training to get free brochures. How's that? Like, I'm going to be teaching, I'm going to teach your company how to be successful, and can you trade out for brochures? Because I'm broke. Biggest incongruence I could have ever been. But nonetheless, so I'm trying to get this free trade going on, and I'm doing it, the worst sales pitch I'd ever done in my life. You ever done one of those sales pitches? How many here are in sales? You ever done one of those sales pitches where you're like a quarter of the way through and you know it's just pointless, but you just keep talking anyway because you figure you're there? So I'm just like, I know this is going nowhere. The guy's looking at me stone cold. I get all the way done with my presentation. I say, so what do you think? And he looks at me and he goes like this. He goes, have you ever read The World of Serendipity by Marcus Bach? Now, I knew the answer he wanted to hear. Yes, me too. Oh, let's do business together. So I'm contemplating lying, but I'm figuring he might bust me on it. So I took the honest approach, and I go, no, I haven't. And he said what I was dreading. Read it, and then we'll talk. He writes down a name and a number. The author's a personal friend of mine. Call him. He lives in Pacific Palisades. I'm like, okay. He says, by the way, that book this year alone put over $600,000 cash in my back pocket. I was a little bit more motivated to read the book. I pick up the phone, I call the number. It's disconnected. So much for good friends. I call information, I get his number. I call it up. A lady answers the phone, Lorraine, his wife. I say, Lorraine, hi, my name's Topher Morrison. I would love it if I could get one of your books. I just went to see, and I can't even remember the guy's name, from this printing company. He won't do business with me unless I read the book. She laughs. She goes, oh, we get a lot of these phone calls. And I go, okay, well, can I get the book? And she goes, sure, just give me your address. I'll mail it to you. You can send me a check. I think, what a sweetheart. I like the way she does business. I said, but I'm a little bit in a hurry. I mean, I'm young. I'm a punk. I'm 20 years old, 22 years old, I think, right? So I'm a young punk. I'm ready. I'm aggressive. I go, well, I'm kind of in a hurry. I want to read the book tonight so I can sign the deal tomorrow. Can I come by and pick it up? I promise not to bother Marcus at all. I'll just run in, grab the book, and run out. And I'll give you your money, your $7. She goes, sure, no problem. Gives me the directions. I go to the house. I walk up. I ring the doorbell. This is not a fancy house, by the way. This is a middle-class house in Pacific Palisades, which is a nice neighborhood, but it's not ostentatious at all. It's a modest house. Ranch-style California home. I ring the doorbell. Nobody answers. And I get to that point where, you ever do this, where you get to the point where you don't know if you should ring it again, because maybe they didn't hear you, but if you ring it, they might open it right away, and then they just think you're pushy. So I'm at that, I'm like, do I do it? I don't know. And I finally go, yeah, I hit it. And as soon as I hit it, the door's open. I was like, oh well. The door opens up. This big, tall man, deep-set eyes, high cheekbones. Seems to reflect years of wisdom in his face. He opens the door and he says, you must be Topher. I said, yep. He said, follow me. So I did. And he walked all the way down the hallway, and I see the book with a little Post-it. It says Topher on it. He turns and he walks down the hallway. I'm like looking at the book going, I follow him. We get all the way down into this hallway, and we come down into this, this library, den, if you will. And he says, have a seat. And he sits there, and he just stares at me for what seems like an eternity. And then he said, so you're here to learn about serendipity? Now, I knew the answer to this question, so I went, yes. And then he said, what other books of mine are you interested in? Oh, didn't do my homework. So I had to go the honest approach again. I said, Mr. Bach, I'm sorry. I don't know of any other books. I apologize. And he says, that's okay. It's all right. He goes, I've written 29. And he points to his library. I think it was 29. I don't remember the exact number. And it turns out Marcus Bach is one of the world's renowned experts on religion. He has spent, since age 14, he's been trying to discover what happens after you die. He's the only person that I know of who's ever been commissioned by all of the 9 major religions to write books on their behalf. Everything from Jehovah's Witnesses to Mormons, you name it, he's written books on their behalf. He starts going through his house and showing me like these horns that he got from Topher when he lived with the monks for 2 years, you know. I mean, all these artifacts. I always joke around and said, you know, if the 10 Commandments do exist, they're probably in his basement. He's just got them there. And, you know, this guy was just amazingly wise. Just an awesome, awesome guy. And I remember in one of my encounters, and basically what happened was, you know, what was supposed to be just a pit stop to pick up a book turned out to be very serendipitous because it became a situation where he became, I call him in my book, Settle for Excellence, I call him my personal Yoda. You know, I didn't say in the book why I call him my Yoda. You want me to tell you why I called him my personal Yoda? Because he had big ears and he had hair growing out of him. And he was wise, so it just seemed like a befitting title. Anyway, what happened was there was kind of an unspoken agreement that I would meet with him every Wednesday, and he would share with me his lessons in life and spirituality. I remember one time, he's going through these artifacts. He shows me this book one time, this big, huge, it wasn't even like paper, it was more like leather, cloth kind of stuff. There's ancient symbols on the cover, and he goes, this was given to me by the emperor of such and such. I don't remember what it was. And he says he gave this to me right before he was about to die. It's a book on ancient symbols and the powers that they wield. And he taps on the cover and he goes, you're going to love this one. And he puts it back on. I'm like, can I have that one instead of the serendipity book? But nonetheless, we started meeting on a regular basis. You guys have read the book Tuesdays with Maury? It was kind of like Wednesdays with Marcus, I guess, you know? And in one of these meetings with Marcus, I was telling him the story about Thomas, this guy who was like, you know, wealthy, making more money than I was back then, and he was depressed. And so Marcus and I were kind of laughing at this poor man's plight because he's such a terrible life. And so I asked Marcus the same question. I said, Marcus, I go, what has to happen for you to be happy? And here was his answers. They sounded like, by the way, his answers sounded like they came right out of a Hallmark greeting card. His answers were things like, if I can hold my wife Lorraine's hand, I'm happy. Or if I can stay up late enough to see the sunset, I'm happy. Or if I can get up early to see the sunrise, I'm happy. He said, or, oh, you know what? If I'm lucky enough to see a butterfly drying its wings in the sun, oh, I'm happy. He had this affinity to butterflies. He wrote a book called I, Monty. It's a good book. And what I noticed was that Marcus's standards were entirely different than Thomas's. And yet Marcus probably made less money than Thomas. Didn't have a fancy car. I think Marcus was wearing pajamas the first time I saw him. Didn't have a Rolex. And yet here was a man who was genuinely happy. And when I say happy, I mean authentic. Not that fake stuff that you see so often in the self-help world where you go, how you doing? They go, I'm doing great. And then they go home and they go, right? None of that. This was like that genuine article, happy, right? And that's when I learned something in life. That's why I learned one of my most powerful lessons. If you want to be happy in life, lower your standards. Stop chasing perfection. Settle for excellence.